The first round of the playoffs is in the books, and the second round is finally here, and there is no better way to cash in on the high-flying hoops action than PrizePicks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on PrizePicks, so don't pass up your next shot with PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. PrizePicks wants us to tell you about this new feature. On PrizePicks, you can play Pick Live Squares during the NBA playoffs, and you could win a trip for two to the NBA Finals. To enter, you just make a $5 lineup with at least one live NBA player pick during any part of the 2026 NBA playoffs. Live player picks are picks made after a game is already in progress. On PrizePicks, how you play, it's up to you. If you want flexibility, choose FlexPlay, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, a preferred partner of the NBA.
This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Alrighty, Pacer Nation. Joining us now on Setting the Pace, he is no stranger. He is the beat writer for the Indy Star. It is Dustin Dopirak. Dustin, hopefully you've been enjoying the offseason. How's it been going?
It's been good, man. Gave me a lot of time to get work done around the house, stuff like that. Still been writing some things and doing some end of season content, but mostly, took time to get this place in shape to some extent. So.
This extended time has given me a chance to get back into baseball a little bit more than I had been, because the playoffs were just taking up so much of our time last year. There was not really time for anything else. But aside from baseball, we found out today that TJ McConnell will be the representative for the NBA draft lottery. Any thoughts on TJ being the guy to go there?
I mean, I like it. I think just, putting him in positions to be, put his face out there. I think it's cool. It's somebody who's obviously earned it. I mean, he tends to have some fun with it. He doesn't have too much fun with it, I guess. It'll be a little bit weird for him, I think, to be in that circumstance. They're going to make him wear a suit, so I presume his wife's going to pick out a suit. As TJ will tell you, anytime he dresses nice, that means he had nothing to do with it. So he's going to have to, hopefully he doesn't show up in sweats and a t-shirt. He shows up in a real suit and a tie and stuff like that. So he'll be, but yeah, I mean, I think nice to kind of put, for the Pacers to put a little bit of sort of heft behind him as a guy that's core to this. And I was just having a conversation on Twitter about people that are really afraid of him being traded, because obviously his contract is very movable. But I think people do absolutely view him as very core to this, as a fan favorite, as a guy they really like watching play, and really his sort of ethos, his approach to the game, just really connects with Pacers fans. I think they've really appreciated the years they've gotten out of him. I think they certainly appreciate the fact that he's still very, very effective at 34. I mean, he's coming off of, as bad as the season was for the Pacers. Statistically, it's one of his best, probably, I think his second best on almost every offensive category, behind that, 23-24 season where he really kind of had a breakout there. So he's, it's one of those things, like, obviously they don't want to be in the lottery at all. They don't want to show up at these things. And Halliburton did have first dibs on this, and very adamantly passed it up, because he felt like he was bad luck the last time around, and said, you're not sending me out there again. We didn't, I wanted the number one pick when we had Wemby. We didn't get it. And so I'm not going back. I'm gonna mess it up. So you go pick somebody else to do it. But it is cool, I think, and go get another guy who's a leader, get another guy who's really just a standard bearer for this group, and a guy that will be one of the guys who's defined and remembered as being part of this run that they're having. And I think it does serve as a sign that, hey, we view him as part of this kind of next run. There's sort of this kind of break gap year, and he's not somebody we're throwing out. This is somebody that we still expect to be a piece of this, then is still going to matter. So I think it's a good sign in that regard, that TJ McConnell is going to be a guy in 2026, 27, and beyond, at least for a little while, as long as his body holds up for at least a couple more years.
Yeah, I don't dislike the TJ pick. I will say that I think it's a little bit reserved in terms of, the personalities that they could have picked from to put on the
Sure.
platform.
Mhm.
My number 1, I did a top 10 for a podcast just for fun, and the number 1 person I had on my list was John Halliburton. I don't think they would have done it, but how incredible would John Halliburton have been?
Oh, oh god, he'd been fantastic. He'd have been
Yeah,
glorious.
they could
That
have they
and for
they coulda had,
entertainment
like, yeah,
value,
number 1 pick. They could have already had a towel for each player available, and he could have just been waving the Debanza towel. I mean, it
he
would have been
could have
"That's
oh my
what we
god.
do, that's what we do."
Oh my god, it would have been great. He would have not shut up the entire time he was up there. Oh my lord. That'd have
That would
been
have been amazing television.
I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. Really, there's so many dads that would team dads that would be good for that. Claude Nemhard would be great for that. He'd be hilarious. Tim McConnell would be great for that. He'd
Mhm.
be fantastic. I mean, like, just any of the point guard dads would be, would be terrific at that. I'm trying to think of other guys I know, like, Aaron Nesmith's dad, I don't think he gets around as well.
Yeah.
But, like, he'd have been great at it, like, there's a good collection of Pacers dads that would've been hilarious in front of a microphone, I think, or in front of just on a stage anywhere would have been hysterical.
Yeah, I was either thinking that or Jenny Busick just because it's Mother's
Mhm,
Day.
mhm.
She's kinda like the mom of the team and she's a
Sure.
mom herself, but I'm like also like, do you wanna give up your day?
Your Mother's Day, no, that's the other thing that I was thinking. That's probably a, like, "Do you wanna come here on Mother's Day?" Like, I mean, you could go to a nice dinner in Chicago and stuff like that, but, maybe that's not what you really want, in
Yeah.
that case. That's not how you really wanna spend that day. So, who knows? Maybe they presented her with the option. Who knows?
Yeah. So I guess my last question on this whole thing for you is, out of all the personalities that the Pacers have and Tyrese basically getting first dibs and saying no, who do you think was most would have been most excited to maybe represent the team?
Um, I mean, a lot of those guys don't like and Pascal would have hated it.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of these
Pascal
guys
would
I
have
feel like would
hated
have
it.
been like, "Ugh, not me."
I feel like the guy who would have been most enjoyed it and been like, "Oh, man, what up?" Because he's just so go with the flow is Obi. Like, Obi would have just been like, "Oh, sweet, yeah, I'll do that," like, for whatever reason, and, and in that case, he would have turned it into, like, a Mother's Day thing for his fiancée. I don't know when those 2 are getting married, they gotta move that thing along,
Yeah.
I mean, they're engaged, and so, like, I think I remember last summer, like, "When are you guys gonna do this? Is it next year or what?" So, like, I think he would've turned that into a thing, a family deal, and I think he might have brought Remy up there, it would've been hilarious.
Mhm.
So I think Obi would have been the easiest fit, out of everybody. I mean, like, I don't know if Zubac knows where he fits with that. I mean, Aaron would have been very professional about it. Uh, Andrew would have been like, "What? I don't wanna be here."
He would give the deadest face every time.
Yeah, it's just like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm at the lottery.
Yeah.
Sure, you're making me do this, huh? Okay." So, I mean, Aaron would be a pro. Pascal would be a pro, but he would hate it. TJ is gonna be good at this. He's gonna be fine. But, like, I think out of anybody that's core, that would have a good time with it, it would be Obi.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Obi's just very easy to talk to, very laid back, and is not afraid to just enjoy the spotlight a little bit, but doesn't always crave it either. Like, he doesn't have to
No.
be the star, but he doesn't mind stepping into that spot either. So
Mm,
I think it's a good assessment. And yeah, I was thinking like putting Zubats up there, like, oh my God, just imagine the amount of pressure that puts on him if they lose the
sure.
pick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This is
That's
why we
really
got rid of this pick. Me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some symbolism there because it's just like, okay, because obviously, if they don't get it, they're gonna be like, that's the whole logic is he's better than what he is going to be more important than anybody they could have got from 5 to 9. Like, that's the logic is that, hey, if you had picked 5 to 9, you would not be able to match what you got from him. So that why it was still worth it to do the deal. Like, you don't want to pass up on a 1 to 4 opportunity given what's there. But on the flip side, from their perspective, it was worth it, to, go get this guy because that's what swinging for the fences means for them. They don't feel like they're really swinging for a title if they don't have a legit center they can trust, and that was the best one they could get, and they really, really, really like him. So, that on one level, that wouldn't be bad, but it would be a pressurized situation. And, I mean, still he's got a baby at home. Like, just let that guy take his, you know, he had to leave town, so let the man take his paternity leave now.
Yeah, take a leave, get your broken bone healed up,
Right, yeah,
We don't need
exactly.
you
Get
anywhere
that
near the
right. Get
court right
get
now.
breathing normal again, all those
Yes.
You don't have to
So
show up in any team activities for a long time.
yeah, and honestly, like, it's such a bummer we didn't get to see more of Zoo, the last
Sure.
part of the season, but, hopefully he can just come back healthy and the rest of this team can get healthy as we head into next season, but now that we're talking about the draft, clearly Pacers want the number 1 pick, but still, if they don't get number 1, still they wanna land in that top 4 because there's a chance they could really add somebody here that doesn't only help them now in this window they currently have, but of course
Mhm.
in the future with
Sure.
Tyrese and whatever that next iteration of this Pacers team is. So I guess just from like a ranking standpoint, how do you kind of tier these players in the top 4?
I mean, my view for them right now, I mean, I view Peterson as the obvious wild card of on some level when he's at his best, he's probably their best like today this year fit. But you're just like, okay, what's the deal here? And I thought CJ Moore from The Athletic, old teammate of mine, did a fantastic job of really digging into him for a piece he did on Darryn. I thought it was fantastic, and I'll sing the praises of that one, of CJ in general, because I'm really a fan of his writing and his work. But I thought he did a really good job really digging in and peeling back some layers on Darryn as a person. I think if you read it, I think it gives you a sense, okay, this is not a guy that doesn't like, there was this notion of, does he really care? Does he really want to win? It strikes you as more as this guy's body was failing him in a very weird way, this season, and that's what drove him to be like, "You gotta get me out," not like, "Hey, I don't wanna play basketball." It's, my body is doing something I don't want it to do, and I need it to stop, and that means I gotta get off the floor." So on one hand, that makes you think, "Okay, you're not getting a guy who doesn't care," but you are getting a guy who's dealing with something that he may not even understand, right now, because it just it and you don't still get a lot of clarity in that story for what exactly is happening. And I'm not sure he has it yet in terms of why did, it's like basically like some kind of like, I don't know what kind of training they did. I don't know if it's like kind of like that Navy SEALs type stuff that a lot of teams will do in August and September to, really dig into the toughness piece. But he had his full body cramp up apparently and had to go to the hospital. And so it's like when you have something like that happen to you, that don't mess with you, like it just, that's not something your body's supposed to do. And, that creates this kind of fear, that, when your body does something you don't expect and don't understand, that sticks with you for a while, and it takes you a while to get back to feeling normal, like it's not gonna happen again. And so I think that's a big piece of what his year was just having this sort of fear that his body was just going to totally betray him again. Everybody, whoever drafts him, is going to need medicals, is going to need, um, to have a real good sense of what it is they're dealing with. So he's the wild card. So given that, I mean, I would say that, my Pacers rankings would be DeBonsa 1, Boozer 2, Peterson 3, Wilson 4. I feel like everybody looks at Wilson 4 with the potential for Wilson to jump Peterson, depending on what they find out. I view as 3 as kind of the placeholder for Peterson. I think you look at DeBonsa and say that's the guy with the highest ceiling, but he has a high enough floor. I mean, like you could see things going wrong, but I think his sheer ability to create a shot means like he's going to be valuable. I think even if you have the same, I think some people watch DeBonsa and they say, okay, well, what if he's just, for the Pacers concerns, what if he's just a 3 inches taller version of Benedict Mathurin? Well, then he's a 3 inches taller version of Benedict Mathurin. Like, that's a thing, like, that's not, obviously there's some concern about, is that a guy that you can make your franchise player? Well, if you're the Pacers, you don't have to, and so if you just have literally that, take Mathurin and make him 3 inches taller, you have a valuable basketball player that can make a difference on this team. And so that's like worst case scenario. That I think is the floor. Like the ceiling is all-star. The ceiling is all NBA. I mean, he needs to be a better shooter, for them. He needs to be a guy that can knock down more catch and shoot threes. He needs to be better at just being in an offense that the ball's whipping around. But I mean, I got to watch him up close once. I went down to Cincinnati to see them play, and Cincinnati was just draped over him. And this is after they had lost Richie Saunders. And I think Richie did a really good job of spreading the floor and creating just space for both DeBonsa and Robert Wright to operate. It was without Saunders, it was just very much like kind of my turn, your turn thing between him and Wright. And they had some bigs that they could throw some lobs to and stuff, but and some other wings. But for the most part, it was just those two guys trying to create stuff off the dribble and running into a bunch of bodies. And so DeMonso was really good at creating within that. But what that looks like is a guy that wouldn't be able to fit in the Pacers thing. But if you imagine a scenario where you have Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam creating gravity, then he gets to do a lot of things that he just didn't get to do. And I think if you don't think he's going to work, then your notion is that he's not going to be happy operating in space, that he's going to want as badly as Mathurin did to like cross guys over and, spend all his time sort of poking at people like Mathurin did. I don't think DeBonsa needs that. I think if he gets to run wild in transition, he's going to be happy. I think he gets to go. His legs get free and he gets to go dunk on somebody. I think he's going to enjoy it. And I also think there's something to be said for the fact that like Halliburton's established. When they drafted Mathurin. I think Mathurin still viewed himself as, all right, man, I'm the highest pick in this franchise in like 25 years, or 35 years. Like I can go make an impact. I can be the guy. I can be this franchise player. This guy, DeBonsa, is gonna, if he gets picked by the Pacers, he's gonna know it's Halliburton's team. And I don't think he's gonna know what he's getting into, and he's gonna know that the job is for Halliburton to make his life easier. And I think he'll be happy to have his life made easier. So I think he's gonna be a really good fit. If they do get him, I think it's not seamless, but it's good.
Let me cut you off here just for a second, because you mentioned a couple of things here with Peterson and DeBanza that I thought were just really interesting. I wanted to respond to. You said for Peterson specifically that for this window right now, he might fit the best. And so I'm kind of curious if you could elaborate on that, number one. And then number two, how much do you think with DeBanza, his style of play in college is really representative of who he was throughout his high school days and what he could become in the NBA? Because I do hear the taller Mathurin comparisons, things like that from fans and from analysts as well. But from a lot of people that are really close with DeBanza that I've heard talk on podcasts, things like that, they think that his game can translate to be more of an off-ball guard where he doesn't necessarily have to be like this dominant ball-my-hand scorer. So just kind of curious if there's anything else on those two things.
Yeah, and on both those. I mean, I think the thing that when Peterson looks like he really fits, when you see like there are some things Peterson does that you're like, okay, that's what they've been missing, and that's what Mathurin can never do, and he can do it right now. Really good at moving off the ball, catch and shoot. He didn't shoot it as well as you would hope, but when he rises up and looks good, you're like, well, that's exactly what you need. Like his ability to create off space, shoot on the move, just curl off of an off ball screen, get a pass, catch and shoot and go up quick. I mean, he's faster at all that stuff than Mathurin. His percentages weren't as high as you want, but I mean, I think a lot of the people that looked at him on his high school film were like, he's not jumping as high, like that's a physical thing. Is like, if you look at, his film from Prolific Prep, when he's getting up on his jump shot, he's getting up much higher on these high school games than he is at Kansas. And so, but when you saw him, just like when you just kind of saw him catch one at the elbow, turn and shoot, you're like, that's what you need. The Pacers need at that position, just like that's what a great offensive guard looks like for the Pacers in that system where it's, quick catch to shoot, like limited time of the ball in your hands, type of stuff. And so like, that's why I look at it and say, okay, you put that guy as your bench two guard where he's going to have, maybe he's one of the first guys off the bench that he'll get some Halliburton minutes in that first shift. And then Halliburton comes off the floor and then he's playing with McConnell. You're like, in both cases, this is a guy that's going to have a lot of opportunity of a point guard creating looks for him of dragging defense off of him and getting kind of clear catch and shoot opportunities. And he's going to, just out of the four, he's going to be the best catch and pull shooter, if you will. He's better than DeBonsa. Boozer's just a different type of player, size wise. Wilson's just not a very good 3-point shooter. Peterson's the most game ready catch and shoot guy out of those four options. There's other guys after those guys that are better, that at least put up better numbers. Wagler and some of those guys that had better 3-point shooting numbers as college players this season. But out of those four, Peterson's going to be the best catch and pull type of guy. To your point on DeBonsa, I just think you're right. I mean, it didn't There were definitely times when I was watching of like DeBonce's looking around and saying, "I'm by so leaps and bounds the best player on this, on this team, and I have to do everything." And so I have no idea then from that what he would be like if he were on a team with another great player. And I don't, I don't get the impression that he would have a problem with it. Number one, number two, and that's just a basic read of the kid. I could be totally wrong. I mean, that's just, I mean, like I got to ask him one question at Cincinnati, and the way he processed it, I think was really good. It was very humble. I mean, he was very clear of like, I'm like, what did what was your read for how you dealt with their attention? He's like, just, I made too many stupid turnovers. Like he led with saying like, I screwed up. And that shows some maturity for a player that's in that position where he's the guy. Even when he was pointing out, other guys' mistakes on the bench, be like, you got to go here, you got to go there, especially on defense. He was like, what are some of you guys doing? He still was able to bring it back to himself. Like he's capable of doing both of those things at the same time, of being critical of teammates, but also being critical of himself when he really doesn't think it's good enough. And I think that's a sign that if you put him on a better team, he's going to be like, okay, is this what you need me to do? I can do that. I don't have to be the guy who has the ball all the time. I don't have to overtake Halliburton. And I do think, again, like the way the alphaness of this makes a difference. Like everybody who goes into the NBA right now sees Tyrese Halliburton as a guy who's taken his team to the Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And like in 2022, when Benedict Mathurin was drafted, Tyrese Halliburton was not that guy yet. And so Mathurin has had to deal with the fact that Halliburton rose above him, okay, and had to try to find a place to put his ego as far as that was concerned. And I say this, I have a lot of respect for Ben. I got along really well with Ben. That is something difficult to feel like, all right, you were being the guy, and then you're not. So, what's how he had to process that. DeBonce would go into this scenario where Halliburton is the guy and Siakam is the guy, and you're dealing with two guys who have been there, two guys who have won an Eastern Conference championship, played in the NBA Finals, gone to Game 7. Siakam's got a ring. He's not going to have a problem taking a step back to those guys and saying, all right, there's something I can learn from them. And this is being on a winning team, being on a team that's capable of winning is just as good, if not a better scenario than going to a team where you're the franchise player, but you're, picking up a bunch of guys that have never won and trying to figure out how to do it together. I think that's going to be so. I think if he gets in that situation, if that's how the ping pong balls go, I think he's going to be perfectly happy being surrounded by guys that have won already. And I don't think he's going to have a hard time fitting it.
Yeah, and I would say for DeBance, just from like the interviews I've heard him have and things like that, you've obviously experienced a couple of those. Just one of those guys that doesn't really seem to have an ego that's too big for his game. And I think sometimes the Pacers really value that, right? And I don't really know. I feel like this whole top four kind of comes across that way as, so, from what I've heard too, like Kristen Peak came on this podcast. She's a great draft analyst and she follows these guys from high school. She mentioned to me, like,
he's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. She mentioned to me, she said, Cameron Boozer and Darryn Peterson are extremely quiet guys. They stick to them, to themselves. That's just kind of their MO. But, Wilson and DeBonce, they're like leader guys. They're vocal. They're out there. And so I do kind of wonder, like, what are the Pacers looking for potentially in terms of that aspect of the game? Because they've got a lot of, to me, it seems like they've got guys that are loud and they need to be, but they're also mostly like, let me sit back and kind of take my role and not overstep. And maybe if you're looking for somebody to have more of a vocal presence on the floor, especially if you're looking at the window after this season, it could allow them just to kind of absorb in a different role. And then maybe in 2 or 3 years, 4 years, maybe, oh, wow, now all of a sudden, here's DeBance, here's a Caleb Wilson with a bigger role in this team and how that could impact. So I'm just curious, do you think the Pacers at all will be influenced one way in terms of their, interview process of going after somebody that interviews well versus someone that's a little bit quieter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the quiet, loud point is the break point. Like in terms of like what they're looking for. Like to me, it's the intellect and it's the ability to process how to operate in a 5-on-5 setting and like be able to talk basketball and and get it. You know what I mean? Like they want smart basketball guys. Like, Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard are not loud, but they get it. They fit. They can self-critique. They can, they have great X's and O's understanding. They understand how they can fit in and be in roles and stuff like that. And I think, that That's the most important part. The vocality they'll deal with based on how things change, and what roles they come into. I mean, because Pascal Siakam is not a guy that does that naturally, but he had raised himself to the point that, throughout his career, by the time he got to Indiana, that Rick was like, "You can trust yourself to be the one who talks," and like they can build somebody who knows what they're doing and knows what they're saying to talk more. It's different than but, like, they can't do that with a guy who's just going out there and, they would rather have a guy who's quiet and knows what he's doing than a guy who's loud and doesn't, you
Yeah.
know? Like, they don't want somebody coming in to be like, "I'm the guy," pounds his chest, all that kinda stuff, but doesn't know how to really fit into a system. And, that's gonna sound like a dig on Mathurin, I promise it's not. I promise it isn't. I mean, like,
We're reading the tea
ego.
leaves, Dustin. We know what you're not saying, but you're saying.
I'm not. Ben had an ego, but Ben tried. Ben really tried, I
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
you know
like the ego, if I'm being honest with you.
Oh, yeah, no, it entertained the hell out of me. There's no doubt about
I
it.
think the front office liked it to a certain degree, like,
Yeah, they
they
did.
liked having someone that was a little bit different.
Yeah. Mhm. There were times when you absolutely needed it. There were times when everybody else's confidence wasn't there and the offense wasn't operating the way it was supposed to, when you just needed a guy to say, "Well, give me the ball. I'll drive through 3 people. I don't care."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I'm ready. I've been
"I'm
waiting.
ready. Give me this. I've been waiting for this."
Yeah.
You know? Like, I'm gonna just like double crossover, go right, go left, go right again, then take it at it, score through contact, like flex in the guy's face. That's what I've been waiting for, man. And I think so. Like they will, if Siakam got to the point where it's like, okay, like you absolutely know what you're doing. Like, here's the faith. Like, say it out loud. These guys need to hear it. And that's
Mhm.
what Carlisle was really like for him. Is like these guys want to hear what you have to say. And then as he started doing it, Pascal became comfortable with it because he realized there was something for him to say that those guys didn't know. And the more he talked and saw himself making an impact, the more comfortable he became. And even when he could tell Tyrese, like, hey, like you've earned this. Trust it. It's gonna come. You're gonna make shots. It's not gonna be all about that. Keep doing the right things and it's gonna work out. And the fact that Tyrese could, even though he's the face of the franchise, could be like, you're right, Pascal. That's good. That helps. And I appreciate you saying that. So like that kind of stuff sort of builds level of confidence. Aaron, Andrew, I think Rick was like, hey, like there are guys here who haven't won. You guys have. You can speak now. Like you've earned it. You got stripes. You've been to a finals. You know, Andrew, you've made huge shots in a playoff game. Aaron, you've made huge shots in a playoff game. You've taken on the best players. You can speak out loud now. Like you're not the guy who has to wait for anybody anymore. You deserve it. You've earned it. Same with TJ, even with Obi to a certain degree. Like it's like, okay, look, you guys now have been through this. It might take a few years before he's willing to make a point to go out and say that. He's not saying, hey, when you walk in the door, you should talk. But it's like after 2 years, after 3 years, if this person is AJ or Peterson or Boozer would ever become, the number 2 guy, when Pascal kind of ages out of that, in whatever way that looks, like they're going to have built an understanding of how to operate within the system well enough that he's going to be able to say like, hey, you can speak now. And so he'd rather have that. So that what they will look for is, okay, are they going to be a start in a good enough place to know what they're doing? And Boozer in particular's IQ is off the charts. It is off the charts for a guy that age. He is just so like it is unbelievable to watch him believe he's 18. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I think he's still 18. I mean, he might
He'll
be
turn
19.
19 in July.
He'll turn 19 in July. I knew it was late. And like if he is, yeah, like they are ethos-wise, he's the easy fit. He's gonna be a guy who gets it. I mean, I was really impressed by the way he can control a basketball game. The knock on Boozer is that you look at it and say, "Okay, well, how high is the ceiling?" Because, like, there's not this insane level of athleticism that you kinda see with DeBonsa and you see to some level with Peterson, you certainly see with Wilson. Um he's like there's some below the rim to his game. Obviously, he can dunk, but he's not getting way over there. But I mean, he is just in the right spot all the time. He's just such a good problem solver on offense, and he can just do he can do anything that you want him to do, especially on the offensive side of the floor. He can bring it up. He can be the ball handler in a pick and roll. He can set the screen on a pick and roll. He can play make as a screener. If he gets the ball on the roll, he can play make out of that situation. He's such a good passer. He's a good shooter. He's a good finisher. Scores at all 3 levels. There's just so many things he does right. And so he's going to be able to figure out really quickly how to make things work because he's going to know what all the options are, in every circumstance of, okay, well, I can do this here, but if they do this, I can do that. He's going to be really advanced at figuring that part out. And so like that quality in Boozer is going to level him up. And it's more like for them, I think it's going to be more like that notion that you have of what a quarterback has to do in a draft meeting. It's like, all right, like, draw me a formation. What do you like out of here? That kind of stuff. I like Boozer will be really, really good at that. And those Boozer will be good on a whiteboard. I mean, I imagine DeBonsa will too. I haven't seen Peterson well enough to know that, but DeBonsa and Boozer both have high caliber understanding of 5-on-5 basketball and what makes it work. And so that is going to play really well for them. That is going to help out each of their causes.
Yeah, and to me, like, this is just a feel thing. It just when you just went through and explained everything that Boozer does, it's like this just screams a pacer player that fits into this
Sure.
Rick Carlisle system. So I can see them falling in love with him, but I also think that, they just got to keep their options open and just do what they
It's
think is best.
It's a funky positional fit.
Yeah.
It's a funky positional fit right now today,
Yeah.
like,
That
5 years from now, if you imagine Siakam having moved on and you put him back into that spot, then you're like, "Okay, that's a great fit." Like, if you can just do a handoff from Siakam to Boozer, you're in great shape. It's just like, well, what do you do with him between now and then, you know?
can he play
You
the
find
5? Can he
some
play next to Toppin?
Right, yeah. I mean, like, I think so, but you don't have height there,
Yeah.
Well, you got 2 guys that are around 6'9", one can jump, one can't really, like, you could play him at the 3, but I don't love your other options there. Like, I feel like that's, like, then you get a little big for my tastes there, so I don't know, like,
Yeah.
you find a way, like, I think the Bonsa's number 1 option, I think after that, if Boozer's on the f if Boozer's on the board, you'd probably find a way, unless Peterson blows you away, but I'd have a hard time taking Wilson over those 2, like,
Yeah.
but I really like him, like,
That's the
I
thing, like, I like all these guys a lot, and I can make the
yeah,
case for how they would fit in with this team so well if they were to be
mhm,
drafted by the Pacers, and, Wilson might take some time to get on the court right away just because, once
mhm,
again, positional fit, is he more of a 3? Is he more of a 4? Could he play some small ball 5? He is pretty tall, so I
yeah,
just, I think there's just so much optionality here, right, with
there
all
is,
these players, and I think
mhm,
Boozer to me is, like you said, the wonkiest fit positionally because it's like, how do you envision a world where him and Toppin are playing together off the bench? But at the same time, like, do you think Boozer's a better fit than maybe playing or giving those minutes to a Jay Huff or a Micah Potter? And I think you can
possibly,
justify where
yeah,
you can say, well, he does so many other things well that
right,
he can mask for some of the issues we might have on the whole, whole wise in terms of, oh, he can't defend and he's on a vertical rim protector, things like
right,
that. And
yeah, he can defend, he's a good positional defender, but, like, he's not, like, Jay Huff was, like, what, 2nd, 3rd in blocks, like,
yeah,
Cameron Boozer's not gonna block that many shots, you
yeah,
know, nowhere near it. So, like, but there's gonna be, like, do I like the idea of Boozer and Toppin playing together on offense? I mean, that looks fun,
mhm,
throw in, like, throw a Walker, go find a 2 guard someplace, somehow, some way, and McConnell? I mean, that could be fun,
yeah,
that
yeah,
would for sure be fun. But, like, defending people, I'm like, there's some concern there, you know? Like, I'm interested what that looks like, but then, like, if you're like, "Okay, well, Jay Huff's your backup 5," there's some concerns there, like, he doesn't have where Boozer's gonna be able to positionally defend and get somebody's way, Huff's not great in those circumstances. He's really good at blocking shots, but, like, if he's bodying somebody up, it's not your best option. He's like, Huff's probably maybe still gonna be a little bit better floor spacer, but maybe not.
yeah,
So, we'll see, like, there that can go a lot of different directions. I mean, like, Boozer creates a scenario where you have to move the most pieces around,
mm,
to make it fit, and to be creative with it, but, like, he's too good of a player and he's too sure of a thing that if he's on the board, let him go. Again, I still think DeBonce is 1, but, I think Boozer's 2.
yeah, yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. I would be interested to see how they feel about Peterson only because we know Pritchard is a former Kansas alum.
Sure.
He's gonna have
That's
prob
gonna get him bonus points. I do think that's gonna get him bonus points because, one, you just like, there is just a connection, but also, like, he is gonna have more info, people are gonna talk to him, like, I'm certain he's had Bill Self conversations already, in whatever way is legal, because I actually don't know, like, off the top of my head, like, what he's allowed
Yeah, they
to
haven't talked. They've been very,
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I think they can, I'm sure Self has been like, "Okay, this is what I'm dealing with here. This is what I know and what I don't know." So, like, I don't know everything, I'm not a doctor, but this is what I've seen. Like, I'm sure, Pritchard has some sense of that. So, like, if he's concerned, then he's already concerned,
Yeah,
and they'll learn more. And that's gonna make a difference. I mean, like, Wilson's interesting because I think he's just the obvious guy at the 4, and it becomes a little easy. If he's still there, because like, I think he can play any one of those spots from 3 to 5, and he's just a really good athlete, you can make it work, and he's gonna defend. He can't shoot a lick right now, and so he's gonna have to get at least a functional jump shot, but, I mean, he can find different ways to score, he can score in the mid-range, you gotta think there's a way to make the three-point shooting better. I mean, the running, I mean, he's gonna be able to run the same way Obi can, like, he's just a great athlete, he likes playing defense, you know, like, gonna be able to guard multiple positions, it's like, again, I have a hard time if you're them picking him over one of that top 3, you gotta be really sure about that, but if you end up with 4 and he's still on the board, you take him and you don't look back,
yeah.
and it's
See,
it becomes a really easy day, like, where everybody that you would want is better is off the board, but he's better than everybody else is left on it.
yeah, and what's so funny to me is, like, I know Chad recently said on JMV, like, "Yeah, we gotta keep our options open if we talk about
Yeah,
trading a top 4 pick." Like, of course you're gonna say that, but to
right.
me, it's like when they traded for Zubats, like, the whole thing was, "We want a top 4 pick if we can keep it. We believe
Yeah,
that much in the top 4,
sure.
so we're not gonna trade it if we get it." Like, that
Yeah,
just
someone's gotta really and it's I mean, the thing that makes it difficult is, like, that pick's not part of the salary match, like, that's why whereas, like, I mean, I don't fully understand the way the NFL works, but you see guys get traded just for draft picks, and, like, in baseball, obviously, you see guys get traded just for prospects, where you can't do that in the NBA, like, you can like, picks are a big part of trades, but it's not like you can say, "Okay, well, this guy's gonna make 10 million next year on the rookie scale deal, so 10 million is included in the trade," like, that's not how it works, like, the pick's not included in the money. So there might be a someone might be willing to say like, "Hey, I'd rather have this pick than this player I got who makes $20 million." But it's like if they give the Pacers this guy, the Pacers have to find a $20 million worth of salaries to give back.
yeah,
So it's like, all right, like you have to whoever they're going to trade to the Pacers, they have to not only like more than the pick, they have to know more than the pick and Obi and TJ,
yeah,
and so that creates a whole other mess of issues. So it's like they have to any other team that wants a top 4 pick that bad, like, has gotta swing really high. It's gotta be able to put something on the table that's worth the Pacers trading $20 million worth of guys they consider core pieces,
yeah,
to get him back, and that's gonna be real hard. It's gonna
yeah.
be hard to make that math work.
Yeah, and I really just don't see it happening. I think they feel so strongly about their depth
I
and
do.
their core
Mm.
7, 8 guys that it just this is almost like a luxury to add a rookie if they can, and if they don't, we can see what they do in the offseason, but we'll have to save that conversation for another time. Obviously, we're just getting
Mm.
so, fixated on this draft and what could happen here with the draft lottery. So just obviously Pacer fans are looking forward to Mother's Day, but also anxiously awaiting because there is still like a good chance they could not get the pick. And so
Yeah,
it does just change things, and it probably makes your offseason a little bit more difficult in terms of getting better around the edges. But if you can get this pick, I think it clearly helps you. So I'm
sure.
uh I'm fascinated. I think my last question for you would be in terms of this draft.
Mhm.
Is there any team that you could see getting into the top 4 that could ruffle some feathers by maybe going, against the consensus top 4 and taking somebody? Because I have somebody in mind, but I wanna hear your thoughts before I share mine.
Let me look at this. 'Cause it's basically like I guess my view is, like, I don't know there's the only guy that intrigues me enough that I could see somebody in particular taking him, is Acuff, you know?
Agree. That's my
And
pick. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, alright, like, who could get up there that would need Acuff enough? And, like, I mean, let me think here. I mean, maybe no. Mm, Dallas?
That's not who I was leaning. I was leaning more of, Light the Beam, Sacramento.
Okay. Alright. I could see that. I mean, I feel like Sacramento needs everything, and I think, so maybe I'm just trying to think of who's all on that roster or who's gonna be on that roster, and it's so difficult to figure out. I mean, I guess that if they picked 4th, they might take a, because if you got Sabonis and you've got, um,
Keegan Murray, they just traded for DeAndre
Ke
Hunter as well.
right, Keegan Murray, DeAndre Hunter, maybe you don't need a Wilson. I mean, maybe Boozer's an even wonkier fit, and then a guy like Acuff becomes your guy, after you've lost Fox,
And
like
Tyrese.
and Tyrese. Yeah, you had 2 great point guards, and you traded one of them for a big thinking you were gonna have the other one, now you don't have either. I still love the De'Aaron Fox is the smartest guy in the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
Just like he made the easiest deal. It's like, "Hey, that really tall French guy? Put me on his team."
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be a big deal. I would rather be his second banana than that seems like the best place to be in this league. I'm
Yeah.
totally fine with just standing in his considerable shadow for the rest of my career and benefiting in all the ways that that's gonna be. I don't need to be the guy. I'm totally fine being, like his second. I'm totally fine with that. Sign me up for that for the rest of my career, and I'll see where it goes. It's, certainly better than seeing where this thing in Sacramento goes. And he was right. So just good on De'Aaron Fox, man. It's impressive. So yeah, so I mean, the Sacramento would be a good call. But I think Dallas would be a good one. I mean, they need a point guard. I don't think you want to continue the Cooper Flag experiment on that
Got
forever.
Kyrie still if he's coming
Get
back
okay
from the
with.
ACL.
Yeah, Kyrie, that's a good point. But it's like, okay, how much longer you got Kyrie? How much longer can you trust that? Um, God, I mean, I like forgot about it. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just thinking of this year's roster, and I was like, "Oh,
I
right,
know.
they do have an All NBA guard with rings. That's one of the best one-on-one players ever. Sure, just sitting out there. I mean, you figure Washington's got Trey Young. If they're gonna whatever they're gonna do.
Yeah, they've got a weird
Um,
roster now with Anthony Davis and Trae Young. It's like, who's the best fit for them?
yeah,
But
what even makes sense?
I will throw this out here real quick because I know everybody always says you pick talent over fit. One thing that Kristen Peak told me was we always hear that, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes it actually is better to go for the best fit for your team because if the
Yeah,
fit's not there, then it can make it really hard to get that player on the court, which
yeah,
then makes it even more wonky for both player and the franchise. And I think
yeah.
sometimes there's not like a right or wrong when it comes to fit versus best player available. I think it's gotta be a mix of both.
It's a sliding scale, I think. Like, it's a kind of a sliding scale of, alright, well, how important is your need, and how like, what's the rest of your roster look like? Like, if you don't have anything yet, then it's like, well, I have another guy that kinda does this, like, it's like, okay, like, if the best player on the floor is a point guard and your best player currently is a combo guard, well, it's like, okay, well, you can make that work, like, and it's like, if you don't have anything else, then you're like, okay, these are gonna be my 2 guys. But it's like, all right, like, if you have all the other pieces and you just need this one, then it's like, okay, then there's a higher bar to clear for not taking that position. So it just slides around. It's a spectrum of, all right, what does the rest of your team look like? In this case with the Pacers, like, it was just so important to go get a 5 that it was worth doing this. Like, so, like, that's kind of a corollary on the same concept of you just had to have a center, and, I mean, if there was a 5-man that was top 4 caliber, then, that 5-man would have had a lot more value with the Pacers. There just doesn't happen to be, and that's why they had to go get him in a trade. So, I mean, fit does matter to your point. Like, if you get stuck, then, you end up useless. And there's some guys that just never get out of that. Like, I'm trying to think of, like drafting, Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio at the same time, like stuff like that ends up just costing you the player. And, like, and you could have a circumstance, okay, well, this guy's just permanently buried below such and such guy. If the Pacers took a point guard right now, even if a point guard was best top 5 on the list, it's like, all right, well, where's that guy going to have an opportunity? You know, um, the 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 way wings operate in the NBA, there is more flexibility there. It's like, okay, like, he doesn't have to be it's like if you need a two guard, maybe you take a wing, he might be bigger, and you just shift things around to make the rest of the wings work. Then in that case you do take the best player. It doesn't have to be the most two guardy of the wings. But like if the best player on the floor is a point guard and you have 3 point guards, then taking another point guard is a bad idea. If the best player on the floor is center and you have 3 centers, including one, if you've got Wemby and you're the Spurs and like you're not taking another center, like just you don't need, like you need everything else. So, there's a sliding scale to that in terms of how much fit matters versus how much getting the best player matters. And it just depends on what the rest of your roster looks like.
Absolutely. Well, Dustin, I appreciate the time. Always enjoy chatting with you and would love to do this here shortly in the next couple of weeks or so after we kind of figure out how the dust settles with the NBA draft lottery and see which direction the Pacers can go now that we kind of know their future and their fate. So would you like to plug anything before we sign off here?
No. I mean, always check on the Indy Star. We're gonna have stuff coming up. I've got some fun, lottery, kind of history stories coming up this week. That'll be out there. I did a piece that'll run, I think Thursday. That's just basically I looked at every lottery the Pacers have been involved in, and tried to, in terms of just how those shook out, and just to kind of develop a sense of what lottery history for the Pacers really looks like. You kind of forget like they got the number 2 pick in the first one. Like
Frozen envelope.
Wayman frozen envelope. So I forgot. I didn't realize like you always talk about that frozen envelope. Like the second year, Stern doesn't pick the envelopes. Like all the execs like lined up in line. There must have been that big of a like Stern. You might have cheated here.
Well, I mean,
They
come
lined
on
up
now.
every other exec, and every exec that was in the room lined up to take, to pull out an envelope out of this drum. So yeah, there's some fun little stories in there. So that's worth one to check out, and some other stuff could be cool as well. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Guys, keep a lookout for that. If you're not following Dustin already, please follow him on social media. It's at Dopirak, am I right?
Yep.
Okay.
No, Dustin at
Just
Dustin
Dustin.
Dopirak on Twitter.
Dustin
Your
Dopirak on
email
Twitter.
address.
So
But
yeah,
at
it's just
Dustin
Dustin
Dopirak.
Dopirak. I'll include the link here in the description, everybody, so you guys can check that out, as well as some of the other pieces that Dustin referenced here in the podcast in terms of talking about Peterson, things like that, if you want to go do a little bit more of a deep dive read and things like that. So appreciate you guys listening, of course, to Setting the Pace. We'll be back tomorrow. Facci will be back, and so we'll have some more draft content and some more Pacers content for you here on Setting the Pace. But until then, we'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.